This is a clip from Beyond Classified. You can access the entire episode now at rockfin.com/FKN+. Yeah, man, everything is a stage, everything is a deception. I want to get back to the trifecta of agendas that we had going on: COVID, Ukraine, and climate change.
Yes,
I'm
definitely.
totally expecting climate change to be one of the next big things. I think that they're trying to really herd everybody into smart cities and somehow get a global power grid centralized going, so where they can control our power and what's going on. The climate changes. It has changed since the beginning of time. That's what it does. We've had multiple cataclysms that probably wiped out humanity many times over throughout our history. So this is nothing new, but they're using it as yet another agenda to pump fear into us and keep us in line with this new world order that they're hoping for, right?
Yes. And I think that there's a couple of elements there. That there's the destruction. They're literally destroying the planet, making it difficult for us to sustain ourselves. That fossil fuels are such a way to have like this localized energy. You can have you can drive a car around. It's amazing the power of a human being when they can access this like almost limitless source of energy. And then they're also, so that's the second thing of it. And then they're also squirting those chemtrails everywhere, which I think is responsible for what you see, what people are perceiving as climate change. That could be in itself enough of an excuse for them to do that, to be able to create droughts, to be able to create fire conditions, to be able to bring a hurricane, a complete unprecedented hurricane to Houston, which is 30 miles inland. I lived in Houston. I was never afraid of a hurricane. And then even with Rita, which was right after Katrina, people were evacuating like crazy to like, get your children out of here, fill up the tub with water. I'm like, I have 3 kids in diapers. I'm not filling a fucking tub with water and leaving it there. Thanks for taking all of the formula and leaving town, but nothing's going to happen. I called my builder. It's like, how many miles an hour do these winds have to be to knock my house over? And then later, I think it was Harvey or something did. Like, I bet the pictures were exaggerated, but it dumped all this water on there. And I'm like, 30 miles inland. I'm from 17 miles in New York. They always tried to tell us there'd be a hurricane. Never happened. And now, they can see clouds. They're now admitting that. There are weather modification programs all over the world. So they are controlling the weather. They are absolutely doing that. They admit it. I just saw a news report from Sacramento that showed how they're doing it, why, when. They're rolling this out so that we accept it, and they're going to blame climate change. But what they're not saying is that they've been doing it all along. And that's why you feel climate change in your day to day, but they're arranging it. But I feel like they're arranging it not only for that to give validity to their claims of climate change, but I think that they're doing a bunch of things that are really damaging to us. All as an attack on our autonomy, so that you can't grow your own food, that you're dependent on them and their grid, that you're shut down, you can't move around as much. I think that's the next phase. I think when they wanted to build out the system, they wanted us to have airfare, they wanted us to have smartphones, which hyper fast communication. They wanted us to be super, super productive. And I think now they're ready to enter a kind of mature, like if you think of or industry or companies or whatever as being like then the cash cow phase and then maybe the liquidation phase. I think they're ready to just like, we're on automatic pilot. They can replace anybody they really need to, or a lot of people with robots, and you reduce the population, easier to count on. My only wild card there is I do feel like I'm beginning to think that it's possible that the West and the East, or Russia and China versus the West, are not fully aligned in that it seems like the West is really attacking fossil fuels, and that China, which is an industrial powerhouse, and Russia, which is a resource center supplier, they reducing the use of fossil fuels, this climate change agenda won't be good for them in their emergence as the new kind of world hegemonic axis, or whatever you want to call it. Are they really, is it an East versus West thing? Is that real? Or I think I'm starting to think it is, but I used to think that they were just playing a game, that, the Rockefellers put all these people in China, and Putin was appointed by Yeltsin, and he talks to Klaus and shows up at Davos. I go back and forth on it, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards they are playing a game that works. They're Putin's not going to out ISIS when he wants to use it as an excuse, even if he knows it's bull. They're not going to out these things. They're going to use these things, but maybe there is a power struggle going on there, or they've agreed to just divide the world in two, which is what an oligopoly would do.
Yeah, I wonder if they just get together and say, okay, you're going to be the bad guy this time, and we're going to start all this nonsense around Russia's going to invade Ukraine. If they just have it all planned out, or if there is legitimacy, like you said, this power struggle between the East and the West. It's very interesting to see what's going on. Now,
what do you think?
Well,
oh,
man,
sorry,
I go back and forth just like you.
Yeah,
I have
yeah, okay.
no idea. I'm just gonna stick with it's a big game for right now. That's my opinion on it. That they kind of know what each other's doing and all buddies and patting each other on the asses behind the scenes. But that's just my opinion. What do you think, Corey?
Well, let me just comment real quick that I'm not worried about climate change because Bill Gates is going to throw some dirt into the sky and block the sun, so we don't have to worry about that, right?
What could go wrong?
Anybody wants to see how that's going to turn out? Just go watch Highlander 2, the
Or
movie Highlander 2. Oh, yes,
Snowpiercer.
it was exactly the same thing. But no, this is a global plot to take over the world. It's been in effect for over 100 years, and we are seeing the modern iteration of it. But like we already discussed, the propaganda is failing. They're not able to maintain these narratives. The digital age really screwed these people. So I'm a full-time Kennedy researcher. I'm writing my book on Kennedy now. And basically, back then, you had 3 news outlets, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then you had local affiliates of all these. And so when Mockingbird came around in the 50s, it was real easy to scoop up all 3 of these companies, and then the trickle-down effect kind of took over everything else. But information would come out, and they didn't perceive the concept of the internet. It was not even a distant thought in anyone's mind. So they knew that they could easily manipulate documents. They could easily manipulate the newspapers and the television news media. But they didn't realize that 50, 60 years later, we'd be able to look back at all that stuff using this new technology. And so it's this new technology of the internet and the digital age that is we're able to debunk these people in real time.
So you think that DARPA created the internet and didn't understand what they were unleashing?
That's always how it is. Like, let me give you another example.
I disagree with that.
Let me give you another example. Oliver Stone came out with his JFK film in 1991. Okay. That movie was produced by Arnon Milchan. Arnon Milchan was a Mossad spy who was engaged in the smuggling of nuclear triggers out of the US. Okay. After he left that position in the Mossad, he went to Hollywood, bankrolled a whole bunch of films. He's a lifelong Mossad guy. But in putting that movie out, which was meant to the movie is horrible from a historic perspective. It gets people spinning in all kinds of crazy directions that are completely irrelevant. But that movie prompted the JFK Records Act, which then led to the release of millions of pages of documents, which has allowed people like me to dig into the story and figure out what really happened. And so, yes, their actions always have an equal and opposite reaction. And so, however, if it wasn't DARPA, it would have been someone else who created the internet, because the idea of linking 2 computers is kind of common. And then the ability to link it to even more, I think it would have been a natural evolution anyway. So
I do feel like the internet was a limited hangout in that it got people like me and my generation. I don't know if you guys, I remember the first time I saw the internet, there was not much on it in 1995. And so then there was a lot on it and I could figure stuff out like crazy. I really, really understood everything. I could find the answer to any MH370, the Boston Marathon bombing. Probably don't even know who Miriam Carey is, but I think she had Obama's baby. I could figure so much stuff out. And then I remember the day it closed, which was February 14th, 2018, the Parkland shooting, they closed it. And I had, before that, even I started saying the internet is a limited hangout and it's working the way the blue laws works for movie theaters. So towns, good little towns and rural communities, whatever, would not allow movie theaters in. They just didn't want them. And so that's when the Hollywood decided to put the blue laws so that there would be censorship and you could trust to have a movie in your town because they wouldn't have, it would be wholesome. And they were wholesome for a really long time, and it got it to absolutely infiltrate everything. And then they stop being wholesome and they corrupt everything. And I feel like that's the way it is with the internet, in that I am totally eyes wide open. I'm a remnant that they can tolerate. My mom's Fox News, but my daughter's TikTok. And she doesn't really, not only does she not actually know about what's really going on, she doesn't want to know. She's like, I will have no friends if I think like you. And I think that's, I think they understand the psychology of teenagers. And I'm hoping that I've given her enough the skills to think, and I'm pretty confident she's going to come out of that trance. But it does so much damage that if they couldn't plan it better, in my opinion.
Well, the internet has definitely been weaponized to the extent where it is changing, the younger generation's emotional and mental states and what their potential is for their own lives. And we're seeing this kind of push for everyone to jump into the metaverse, a digital world where everything is just material. You're plugged into technology. You don't have to worry about your real life anymore, and you can be whatever you want. You can be a dog, a cat, a centaur, and you're living digitally.